to examine it and study it. Like I said, we don't have to read an entire chapter and forget what we've read. Take one word apart, and that'll encourage you to want to seek more into what the word or what the entire verse has to tell us. So we move on with verse 9, which says, "And they journeyed from Marah, and came unto Elim, and in Elim were 12 springs of water, and 70 palm trees, and they pitched there." Okay. So they came to a nice oasis, and Moses went out and counted each and every palm tree to make sure there were 70. Okay. We'll get to that in just a minute. So, we say strengthened. We move forward to Elim. So let's first consider came unto Elim, which is Vayabonu Elimina. In the word came, bo, we get more than an idea of coming into a place. This word means to enter in and to be carried in. But it also carries the idea from the Proto-Hebrew of filling a void. Elim means palms, but at its root is ayil, which we find the meaning of a ram, as well as the posts of a door and its door jambs. This word also means a strong leader, as well as a mighty tree. Now, we can take all that stuff and kind of bunch it together, and we can draw into our minds the teaching, the leadership, and the redemption that we received through Yeshua, who was the door and the ram. There was a ram who took Isaac's place, and Yeshua took our place. And that Yeshua entered into Jerusalem, traveling over the streets covered in palm leaves, and who was ultimately hung on a tree. Now, we can consider all that stuff. But let's think about the balance of the verse before we jump into any conclusions. It says, in Elim there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they pitched there. So let's consider a combination of numbers and Hebrew words to give us an idea of what we enter into in Elim. First we see 12, which is a number represents completion. 12 is a perfect number. But 12 is also the ordinal value of the letter Lamed. Lamed is the 12th letter of the Aleph Bet. The Hebrew word for springs used in this verse is ayinot, which means eyes. Now, how do you get eyes from springs? But the ayin represents our perception. In the water, we consider the root of the letter mayim, which is the mem, which represents for us the word. But in this, there's an idea of two different perceptions taking place, and that there are 70 palm trees. Like we said earlier, did Moses go out and count the palm trees to make sure there were 70? Why 70? Why not 60? Why not 30? Why not 102? 70. 70 is the numerical value of the ayin. This gives us an idea that something or someone is watching or perceiving us. So as for palm trees, it isn't so much the word tamarim that is of interest here, but the idea of a palm. We have the name Elim, which we said means palms, but if we also consider the drawn proto-pictograph we see of the kaf, if we take a look at the kaf, we have two up and down lines. We consider the doorposts, and then we have two curved in lines that make up the door jambs. The door jambs are the things that hold the doorposts in place. So we have a Proto-Hebrew pictograph of the kaf. Now, kaf means blessings, but if we consider that, and then if we consider all of that with the mem and the lamed, what can we see in this? We see that we have a mem, we have a lamed, and we recognize now the kaf. If we combine these letters, we get the word malek, which means king. If we consider these letters and we add the ayin in from the word ayinot for fountains or springs, we get the word la'amek, which means your people. So we consider something like this at Elim, that we are in the presence of our Elohim, that was made possible through his word and our redemption, Yeshua, who is Mashiach, our King, and that our being able to perceive him as our King is what allows our Elohim to see and perceive us through the word as being his people. So we recognize Elohim through Yeshua, through the word, as being our Elohim. We recognize Yeshua as being our King, Mashiach. But in turn, we have Elohim looking back at us also and perceiving us and watching us, that we are his people. So we are never alone. We have a journey through life. We have a lot of stops along the way. But we are Yehovah Elohim's precious people and his possession. He will always watch over us and keep us well. We simply need to remember this in our day-to-day when chaos and bitterness begin to press in. Like I say, we don't simply need to remember Elohim on Sundays or on Saturdays or whenever people meet. But we remember him every day. We build a relationship with him every day. And we draw closer to him every day. And when we remember this, then the chaos, the bitterness, the problems are a lot easier to go through. We pass through the mist of the sea. We have a mighty King who is always watching over his people, protecting them, feeding them, and bringing them to a place of rest. Yahuwah said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So in believing and receiving his word and anointing, who is Yeshua HaMashiach, we truly know that we are never alone. So, all that's being considered. Any questions? Well, this brings us down to only about 857 more stops. But we'll continue looking into these places that they stop, and to help us to be prepared for to start examining ourselves in Elul. We're knocking at Elul's door, and it'll be here soon. And in the month of Elul, we have Rosh Hashanah, and then right after Rosh Hashanah, or during Rosh Hashanah, we have Yom Kippur. Then we move into Sukkot, and in the midst of all that, we'll run the Torah back from Devarim. We'll run it back to Bereshit during Simchat Torah, and then we'll begin our Genesis studies. So I've got Genesis done. It'll be bound. We'll put it in a 3-ring binder. I will include separators in there, and we'll also have additional notes. We'll have the Hebrew letters, the Proto-Hebrew letters, and a study guide in there as well, so that when you start putting the Torah together, you'll have all these tools at your disposal to study, and you don't have to try to remember where you left your notes. Any questions from anyone? Yes, ma'am.
What chapter in the Bible did you receive this?
Huh?
What chapter in the Bible did you receive this?
Oh, this is numbers. Yeah, Bamidbar is the original Hebrew word for numbers. It means in the wilderness. You know, it became numbers when they translated Torah out of Hebrew and into Greek. They assigned it the word numbers because it's a lot of counting. So, but Bamidbar is in the wilderness. And we'll find when we start going through Torah, we'll have the numbering system in Torah is different than the numbering system that you're going to find in most of your Bibles. So we'll be talking about that as well. Anybody else?
I see what that can do by now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the way to do it. You know, just trying to give ideas of what the verse is expounding.
Sort of.